Madge says this is the Founders Day, and we're talking about Reverend J. But you'll notice on the stand behind me, there's two different pictures, two different people. There's one on your left that's in the center is Reverend Joe Pinecoffer. He was Reverend J's right-hand man for many years. Are we live yet? Okay, welcome to YouTube and Facebook Live. This is our Founders Day presentation, Sunday, July 6th, 2025. Our opening prayer this morning, I went back in the archives and I pulled something out from 2019 that I co-authored with Reverend Joe Pinecoffer. So we'll start off with something that was from Reverend Joe. Our opening prayer. God, we appreciate this day for the life you have given it, and this beautiful morning for the essence of your love in the air. We will live this day in love and light as you have created it for us. And God, thank you for this wonderful gathering of people joined together in spirit and celebration this morning in our home center. Bless us all and guide us in Christ. So be it in our love and light. Amen. And I'll turn the podium over to Reverend Madge.
All right. Thank you so much. Yes, when Joe and I decided to get married, I knew that I inherited Jay. He was part of the package. So I got, and then I'd get their names mixed up, Joe and Jay. It's like, and then it's like, whichever one I'm married to or whichever I'm not married to, couldn't get them all straight. But it was good. Jay needed a keeper. Joe needed a wife and Jay needed a keeper, and I got to fill both of those roles. All right. Well, last year after our summer barbecue that we had, it was suggested at one of our board meetings to change the summer barbecue to Founders Day. And it just fit. It seemed like a really beautiful thing to do. It was one of his favorite occasions, one of his favorite holidays. And so we did that. And Reverend J. Smith was the founder of the Home Center, and he founded it. Actually, we found some paperwork from 1992 of the time it was submitted to be a nonprofit. So that goes way back. And we're doing this so that those of you that didn't get to know him can have a chance to know who he was and what he was about and what the foundation of the Home Center was built upon. And many of you didn't get a chance to know him because during COVID, we weren't able to have church service for a certain amount of time. Of course, everything had to shut down. We continued to record online, but we had quite a turnover. There's not very many people here. How many people here actually knew Jay? Oh, there's more than I thought. Okay, sweet. All right, that's good. That's nice to know that. And pardon me? And they still came. Yes, they came back. We're so glad. But we did have quite a wave of new people, and a lot of people say, I just never got a chance to know him. So hopefully this fills the bill. He had some amazing skills. He was tenacious and had extreme determination. He never quit. That was one thing about him. He never quit. And quitting was just not a part of his thinking, and it was not a part of anything he did. In fact, he struggled with the word that many of us have embraced these days, and that was the word surrender. To him, surrender meant quitting. But now we've morphed with the word surrender. It's not at war where you surrender to the enemy. It's where you are less resistant to the things that you need to think about or embrace, is the way we're using the word. But he really struggled with that word. As a young man, he had a landlady that decided it was time for him to find his spiritual path. So she started taking him to all the different churches in the area, one by one each Sunday, and then they would talk about it afterwards to see if that was the church for him, see if that was a fit. And each time it would be like, no, that's just not it. Well, the last church, which was one of the last options they had, they exhausted all of the other options, was the Spiritualist Church. And this was in Buffalo, New York. So she took him to the Spiritualist Church. And as he entered the doors, his grandmother materialized in front of him and opened her arms and said, "Welcome home." So he knew that was going to be where he landed on his spiritual path. It was quite beautiful. Well, after the service, in the spiritual churches, they give messages, intuitive messages, much like we do on Wednesday nights. They do that after every Sunday service. Well, of course, he got a reading from one of the people that named his grandmother, her name was, oh shoot, I don't remember now. It was a very unusual name. I had it in my head this morning. I forgot it right now. Anyway, they named her by name and said, "Your grandmother wants you to know," and gave him an information. And then somewhere in the story, somebody told him that in 5 years he was going to be up there pointing to the pulpit. And he was like, "No way, no thank you." But he was, in 5 years, he was up at the pulpit. He started training and started learning, and he took it very, very seriously. He just didn't do it as a couch lesson. He lived it and breathed it. He would work, and on Friday night, once he got home from work, he would do his work until Sunday night, and then he would go back to work on Monday. So all weekend for a long period of time, he was just doing his work to be able to develop these skills and these talents that he had. And of course, he didn't quit. So, that was what he did. So he worked for the government during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And there, as we know, those were very intense times for riots and revolution about race and gender equality and employment. And he worked for the employment department of the government. And he was instrumental in changing the culture of employment in the New York State. And you'll hear a reflection of that in one of the clips that I have to share with you. The thing that Jay did that so many people didn't get about him is that he used his workplace as a playground. That was his playground to practice his spiritual practices. He didn't just practice it privately or in circles of friends or in circles of like-minded people. He would learn a principle, then he would go to work to make it happen. He would go into the workplace to make his spirituality and the principles of which he was learning to make them work and make them happen and figure out how it works. And that's what people don't oftentimes understand, even in their own world. It's like, no, turn your workplace into your spiritual haven, into the practices. You learn about manifestation, you learn about your reality. Now go to work and make it happen. But that's what he did. So he was truly a pioneer. People weren't doing that at that time. Now it's pretty commonplace. His primary book that he took to heart and put into practice every single day was The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Shinn. And that was written a long time ago. She definitely was a pioneer. Now we take her principles and it seems really elementary, and they are, but spirit is elementary. It's simple. We make it complicated. So anyway, that is what he lived by. And he would learn a principle, and then he would petition to the spirit world and to his guardians and to his helpers and his spirit teachers to show him how it worked. Okay, there's this principle. How does it work? What makes it happen? And he would constantly watch his world for evidence of that principle coming to life. How did that work? Oh, this and that happened. That's where that principle is. That's how it works. Well, eventually he moved to Portland. He was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, but eventually he came to Portland with his wife. And then eventually Joe, my late husband, also joined him out here in Portland, in Oregon. And then later he and his wife divorced. But Joe and Jay were spiritual brothers. I think they walked many lifetimes together. And so it was no surprise that they were walking through this lifetime as well. And then eventually Jay moved to Salem, and he became a part of the Salem Spiritualist Church. I don't know if you know, there used to be a spiritualist church here in Salem. It was down on Madison Street. And he was that's where, or he was a part of that church, and then that's where I met him, was at that spiritualist church. Started going there. A girlfriend of mine suggested one day, she says, hey, if I find a spiritualist church locally, will you go with me? And I said, sure. What's a spiritualist church? I'll go. So I had no idea. So we went, and that was where I met Jay, and then the rest is history, so to speak. He was never satisfied with the status quo. He was a mover and a shaker, and he wanted so much more than what the spiritualist church would offer him. He wanted to bring classes and workshops, very much of what we have here, and they didn't want to do all of that. They were happy with the way it was stable, at least he thought, or they thought. They're not there today, so it wasn't too stable, right? So anyway, he had to leave because his soul would not let him be put in a box. So that's when he left the spiritualist church, and many of the people there followed him. And then he started meeting in his home, and then they came up with the idea of their own church, their own center. And when he started the home center, well, as I said, it was in 1992 that we found that piece of paper that says that was when it was submitted, and that's much earlier than I thought. So it's been around for a long time. They used to meet in his living room, as I said, and then they started renting spaces around town. And I would pop in and out of the various places that they were at. I wasn't committed to being a member or going on a regular basis, but I'd pop in and out. And when they were down at Unity renting the library space, and then they were down here on Wolverine Avenue renting an office space, variety of places like that, until he finally they were looking for their own property, their own building, and then he found this place. But I want to stop here for a moment and share the first clip of the video with you, and then I'll continue with the story or the timeline afterwards. In this first video, it was in December of 2020, and Jay was going to be 91 years old at that time. So it was December. His birthday was in February, so a couple of months shy of being 91. And let's see. Oh, that was during the pandemic. So we were trying hard to stay connected to our congregation. And so this one is about a couch discussion of Dick and Jay sitting on the couch talking about spirituality or principles. So I just took a 2.5 minute clip out of that conversation. I told Dick, I said, I cut you out, buddy. But anyways, 2.5 minutes of Jay talking about what one of the principles that he believes in.
Maybe this 2021 is the age of Aquarius. It's coming into a mental age. It's coming into our creativity. We are free and unlimited. We don't have to destroy the opponent. All we have to do is demonstrate a better. Don't preach to me. Show me. Like the unsinkable mighty ground. I'm not down yet. Don't preach to me. Show me how to do it better. I can do it. There's some place I know it. I have to tell you that when I was back in Buffalo, a person that I knew when I was in the service in the 50s, now we're in the 80s, and she was an instructor at the University of Jacksonville, and she had a group of African students talking to her about Christianity and the Christian religion and stuff like that as part of the socialization class that she had. And they asked her about building the fig tree. How did Jesus build the fig tree? And she said, I have a friend, he lives up in Buffalo, New York, and if he was here, he could explain how Jesus built the fig tree. But I haven't a clue. At the same time she says this, and we're 1,000 miles apart, I'm in my living room of my house, and all of a sudden I got this hunch, go into the kitchen. So I go in the kitchen, I walk up to the telephone, and I said, the telephone, why am I here at the telephone? And all of a sudden I saw my telephone directory, and I opened it up, and there's Jane's name. I haven't talked to her in a couple of years. I wonder if she still got the same number. So I called her. And as soon as she picked up the phone, I started explaining to her how Jesus willed his victory. And when I got all finished, I said, I haven't a clue of why I told you this morning. And she says, I do, but I got to call you back because I'm teaching a class and that's a question they ask. And she goes back into the room, and here's all of these students looking at her, and she said, you know, I was just talking about Jay and the willing the fig tree. He just called me to give me the answer. He said their eyes got this big around and couldn't figure out how he could have heard her 1,000 miles away. We were all connected.
Isn't that good? Yeah. He was quite the storyteller, I have to say. Anyway, one of his favorite phrases that he used all the time was to be free and unlimited. He lived by that principle. And that's what he wanted for everyone more than anything, was for everyone to be free and unlimited, whatever that meant for them. So I want to share one of Jay's stories about how he obtained this property. He and the board, they were looking for a place to have a building, to have their own bricks and mortar, as they call it. And they found this place. It was for sale. And it used to be Grandfather Time. There was a business in town called Grandfather Time. And he lived in this building, and then he had a kind of a showroom. And this used to be the garage and the shop. There used to be an elevator where that post is that he would repair the clocks upstairs. So this has all, of course, been renovated. Anyway, he needed $25,000 to put down on it, and he didn't have it. He just said yes to the faith, on faith. So he needed $25,000 to put down on it. It's like, come on, we can pull this together. Well, it wasn't showing up. He's chanting and chanting, show me the money, show me the money. Where's the money? He would do this when he would talk, when he was pulling in energy and talking about stuff. This was one of his motions. And he was just chanting and chanting day and night for show me the money. Where's the money? Bring it in. Well, it got down to the very last day, almost the last hour, but to the deadline of having the money to be able to purchase this place. And a woman that was on the board, very close person to him, called him up and she said, you know, one of my CDs is maturing and I'd like to get to cash it out and give you the money to put down on it. And it was $25,000. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'll pay you back. Okay, so she did. So she did that. They got it down. They went running down to the realtors with the money and got it put in theirs to secure the place. Well, several years later, it weighed heavy on Jay's heart that he hadn't been able yet to pay this loan back. In his mind, it was a loan. So he talked to her about it and he said, well, it's about time I start paying you back for that $25,000. And to his surprise, she said, no, you can't do that. And he says, why? She said, my life has been so much better since the day I gave you the $25,000. She said, all of my other investments have just grown. I'm able to buy a nice house. I'm able to live the life I want to live. I'm able to travel. She says, you can't give me that money back. I don't want my old life. And that was something that he lived by. Whenever there was donations, any kind of money that was brought in, he would bless it with all the happiness that they could enjoy. And he would just see for them, just put it between his hands and see for them all the happiness that they could hold. Whatever the happiness was that would bring for them, that's what would come for them as that part of the retribution of what comes back to them. And he lived by that principle. And I continue to carry that principle through. And I think it's something we need to all do personally in our practice, to see for that person that gives us anything, the happiness that they would like to have in their life, that they desire. So I'm going to show another clip. This next clip is Jay giving a message here at the podium. And this too was during the pandemic, because we didn't start recording before then until the pandemic. And then we started recording. Well, we had audio. but that's not the same. Anyway, so we didn't actually have an official audience because it was during the pandemic, but we had a few people that would say, "Can I please just come anyway?" It's like, "Yeah, sure, fine." And it was sweet because it's really hard to give a message to nobody or to just the few of us that are here doing the recordings. So I really appreciated those few people. I think Susan was one of them. She was one that says, "Can I please come down?" So she'd always show up. So we always had a few people. It was lovely. Anyway, in this clip, Jay is 90 years old, and he's probably in better shape than most 70-year-olds. I swear. Just he was as determined to keep his body going and to pull in the energy to stay young as he was to make this place happen for us. I'm sharing this one because it gives you an idea of the work that he did for the government and working for the employment department during the 60s. And that was a great time of change. So I want you to see this next clip.
And this one, I like to kind of take you back quickly to in the 60s. I was in Buffalo, New York. We had burned half the town down and a lot of really active activity. We were experimenting with companies dealing with the way they do business, allowing other people to come in and do the same work, and not to include women or handicap or minorities. Everyone has a talent and it can be used successfully in the business world. And as a result, after 5 years, the government was very modest. They said, "Oh, if you're lucky, if you put 4,500." Well, we quoted over 13,000 that went through my program. We changed the whole hiring practice in the Western frontier, and it took the pressure off. But that wasn't enough now. We're educating children. Look at the knowledge that's available to all of us by just our cell phone. What we have access to. And it doesn't mean what gender it is who has the talent to run this machine. I got to raise my hand. I do not do well with a cell phone. I'm 98 and it's just a little bit out of my range. So I have people help me all the time. And you know, it's the best conversation bit. You go up to somebody and say, "I don't know how to make this thing work. Can you show me?" And the little kid, he just punch it a couple times and I got it done. Well, I don't have any grandchildren or anybody like that, so I'll just have to keep asking these kids out there. And this is what's so amazing. And these kids are demonstrating what's wrong with it. We are human beings that we should be treated like human beings. And regardless of race, creed, and color. I can remember being in the service, and Truman said, all minorities in the service are going to be treated equally. Let's really there's some things catching us unaware. We're wiping out jobs, sending them overseas. And the people in the low ends, the first hire, are now going to miss all of those. So this fear just keeps building and building. What's in it for me? I'm literally amazed that we haven't had more problems than we have. Because we're thinking about the dollar. We're not thinking about productivity. We're not thinking about you as a human being. But worst of all is, I think our population has lost the biggest friend they ever had. I have God's Spirit. And I never talked about it at work, but I never did anything without asking God's Spirit, "Come on, I need some help. This is a little out of my league." And they walked me through it. And my boss would come up and say, "Oh, that's a nice thing you did." And I said, "Look, but I'll tell you what. Every time I do something nice, boss, you can take the boss. And if I do something wrong, I'll take the blame." You know, that was the greatest gift I gave him. And it was the greatest gift to me because for 5 years, I only had one that he did wrong. All the rest came out right. He got all kinds of plaques. And what was nice is I had the ability to do it. And that God's Spirit was teaching me more and more how to keep on going.
And he lived by those words too. I mean, he did everything by employing his spirit team. He would always he'd always say we. And at first when I got to know him, it's like, well, who's we? It's like, I'm not sure who we is. And then finally I figured it out. Yeah. It took a little while. He had a wonderful ability of seeing a person's potential. And nothing was more frustrating to him than to see your potential and have you waste it, as he called it, or anybody. Oh, yeah. If a person was wasting their talents, their skills and talents, he would get angry. I mean, not nice angry either. Yeah. Yeah, we some of us know that kind of anger out of him. It's like, oh, he would be so mad. Anyway, there were times when he would really land hard on people because he could see with what they were wasting, and it wasn't pretty. And some people really got hurt over it, and think he was just this mean old guy because he would land hard. But it's because he could see the bigger picture. So that really frustrated him. However, at the root of his anger and frustration, it was because of what he could see. If someone was spiraling down the drain in their life and they were not going to be able to live a very good life, a pretty, I don't know, just spiraling. We know what that looks like. He was he was somebody that could, as metaphorically I would call it, grab them by the hair, pull them out of the drain, as ugly as it might be or as painful for them as it might be, but he could salvage souls in a way that was just amazing to me. But it usually wasn't very pretty. One time came in the front door of the other building, and I could hear him yelling and cursing at somebody in the living room. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to have to do an intervention here? What is going on? And I was quite horrified initially. And so, but I thought, just take it easy. Something said, just don't go barging in. And so I crept around the corner and I peeked around and I saw who it was that he was yelling and cursing at. And I said, oh, oh yeah. Okay, I get it. It was one of these young men that he was trying to counsel and trying to pull out of the drain. And he was a stubborn guy, and he was thick-headed, and he wasn't getting it. So Jay was using every strategy he knew, which was yelling and cursing at him, as an attempt to get through to him and get him to realize what he had in him and how to access that. I don't know if it ever worked, but I learned right then that there's some things you don't interfere with. I didn't interfere with that one. But during the pandemic, our donations, of course, dropped off. And I want to really give Jay credit for putting his money where his mouth is, so to speak. It was his retirement money that sustained the home center during the pandemic, because people weren't attending, so our donations dropped down to almost nothing. But we still maintained, and thank goodness for him that we were able to continue to have home center, and we still have home center today because of his generosity and his determination and his support that he will make this place happen. So I'm very, very grateful to him. The next clip that I want to share is Jay talking, and it was a different segment of that same sermon. And he never stopped holding this building, this center. And he always wanted more. That was one of the things he'd always say, I want more. What's more? What's next? He drove himself and he drove others for that more, whatever that next thing is. And so this video includes one of the stories that was pretty typical of his messages. It does come to an abrupt end, so it's a little startling, but it was the place I needed to cut it off to keep it within the time frame.
And we need you all, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, whatever, because you have a talent that I don't have. And I need someone to walk along with me to make it possible. And that's what I look to all of us, even those out there that figure they have fear about what's going to happen to them if they become obsolete. You only become obsolete when you quit learning. You just let go. And that's the worst thing you could ever do. But think of this. if I'm expecting to, they already said you can live more than 100 years, and I'm going for 100, because we all of us, have invited the creative forces of this environment to come in and help us to be more. Whether you call it God, funky bunk, whatever term you put it on. Invite the intellect, consciousness of the universe that's in your world. And when your tower starts falling down, don't just sit there and suck your thumb, just say, hey guys, I'm stuck again. Now let's bring me up to speed, bring me up to work. Open the door. Don't be afraid. I remember when one more thing before I quit, I run off script again this morning. But when I got my master's degree at the university, my mother and father didn't even come to my graduation because they couldn't figure out how any universe would give me a master's degree. Because when I was going through high school, I had more red report card than green. What I used to do is, when I answered just enough questions to get a 72 and a half, I quit. Because why answer all the rest of them? I already knew it. So I didn't have to prove it to them, I knew the rest of it. And that's the way it's kind of been. Kind of hid the secret that I had, but I didn't have.
So those are just some of the typical ways in which he would talk and share some of his stories. Another thing that Jay mastered so well was energy work. That is what he really did so well. It was one of his big skills and talents. He could work the energy in a room, and he'd pull all the energy from the world around him. He didn't judge it as positive or negative. He says it's just energy. And so he just would pull in the energy. He says that's what the earth does. The earth uses energy. It doesn't judge it as positive or negative. We're the ones that label it. So he would just pull in the energy, and he called it surplus energy that's just floating around to be used. And he learned how to pull that energy in and utilize it to energize a room for healing or whatever it is that people needed. And we continue as a ministry team, we continue to do that with this space, bring in the energy, charge it up so people have something to fill their cups up with. He wanted people to be able to come in and fill their cup and then go home full and rejuvenated and fulfilled. So that was part of the work that he taught all of us, and we continue to do here. He would be able to pull electricity from the light socket too. He would, if somebody sat between him and the light socket he was pulling energy from, they would feel it. One time he told a story about some guy that didn't believe him, so he sat there and he goes, yeah, I'll never do that again. It was uncomfortable. He would blow out the early editions of our tape recorders. We'd have to have them far enough away so that it was out of his field, because next thing you knew, it stopped working and it just wouldn't work anymore. So that was the way it was then. Now our recorders are sophisticated enough that they're not that sensitive, but the early ones were really susceptible to his energy field. And so we always had trouble with getting him recorded. So in closing about him, I want to be able to have him lead us in a meditation. So I pulled one of the meditations off of one of his services and have him lead the meditation for us. So get yourself comfortable and enjoy.
Let's go into meditation together. Go to our two homes. First, let's put our right hand on our heart and our left hand up to receive God's wisdom, courage, His workers He sends to us to help unburden the soul. Let go of the energy so that I can heal it. Let go of the burden that they carry. It's only physical energy, so let's give it back to Mother Earth so she can heal it and make it fertilizer for new growth, new approaches, new ideas. Feel your connection to your teachers, to God's Spirit, and the spirit of people that walk faces this earth in a physical body who are seekers, and we're seekers for solutions, seekers to be. I don't care what the rest of the world is doing. I'm going to take care of this recording machine, this physical body, and heal it. And when I go home, I show my Creator and my spirit friends what love does when it's freely accepted, freely shared, freely expansion for the next lifetime. And then next, as I have my hands out like that, I pull from Mother Earth the energy, the chemistry, what is ever necessary to redevelop this body, make it healthy, make it strong, make it one of the greatest recording machines of my journeys upon this earth. To record the true feeling of what unconditional love feels like. To understand it and working with it. And to be able to understand other people who have not found their way, but not be critical of them, but be an example for something best. If I can't give them hands up, I give them nothing. Because they have their cups already full. I'm doing here not only to evolve myself as a spiritual being and a physical expression, I'm also a role model for others. Keep on going. Because the rewards of unconditional love is so magnificent. It puts you through that song, You're my God to thee. That's why we're here. And we thank our spirit people working with us. We thank the God power for existing. We thank Mother Earth for her nourishment. And together, we will make words flesh, now and forever. Amen.
Yeah. How you guys doing? Yeah, that was nice, huh? Yeah. He had a way of doing those meditations and pulling in the energy, and you always felt it. So we're going to do their offering now, offering to the home center, and let's bless it the way he would, of all the happiness that you can stand. And that's usually why we end it with coming back to you and blessing you with all of your wants, needs, and desires. Except we have a missing basket, huh? It's over there? Okay, there we go. All right, let's put the gift to our gift to the home center, our love and support for the home center. So grateful that we can have this wonderful facility and these wonderful buildings for us to meet. And we bless it with our heart. We bless it with our generosity, knowing that we are already abundant, knowing that we already have all of our needs met. And we see this blessing the home center energetically moving through the home center and coming back to you multiplied 100 times with all of that makes you happy and bringing you happiness and all of your wants, needs, and desires for your highest and greatest good. Let that be so. Amen. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to invite Dick back up. He has something to share, and then the closing prayer, and then I'll come back up.
From the same archives where our opening prayer came from, I found something from 2021, I think, and it was something I came across for Father's Day. It never got presented. So I'm going to share that today before our closing prayer. So this is Remembering Reverend J. Now in 2021, I was here usually 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days because on Saturdays, every other Saturday, I would mow the lawn. So I was here quite a bit with Reverend Jay as he was preparing to leave. So this is to him. Strength of a mountain. Spirit took the strength of a mountain, the majesty of a tree, the warmth of a summer sun, the calm of a quiet sea, the generous soul of nature, the comforting arm of night, the wisdom of the ages, the power of the eagle's flight, the joy of a morning spring, the faith of a mustard seed, the patience of eternity, the depth of a family need. Then Spirit combined these qualities when there was nothing more to add. Spirit knew the masterpiece was complete, and so he called it Dad. I called it Reverend J. Now for our closing prayer. God, help each member of this, our home spiritual center family, to be humble and gentle in our interactions with each other, to be patient with one another's faults, even if we're tired, frustrated, angry, or hurt. Help us to make every effort to remain united in spirit in our home. Thank you so much for bringing us together here today. Thank you for this wonderful blessing of family, for the similarities we have and the differences we enjoy, for the wisdom of age and the energy of youth, for the way Spirit watches over us as individuals and the way God releases love into us as its gift. Bless our time together and draw our family together in all its wonder and beauty. Show us how to love and respect each other. Lead us to support and encourage one another. Inspire us to work together and to become the picture of your perfect love. Together we will make a family. Family is the heart of our home. A family is a patchwork of love. In that love and light, amen. To Facebook Live and YouTube, that ends our service today. We'll see you next Sunday. We're out.